and Tiffany. Today we have an award-winning composer, Justin Levitt. He's my new friend from 6 months ago. We met at Steinway because he's a general manager in Northern California, and we met when I was picking a piano for my recital in San Francisco, which I think some of you watching might have gone to. Anyway, we're going to talk about how he started composing from an experience with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, which perhaps many of you know. And then we're going to talk about how he does improv at the piano, which I can't do, and how he composes and what composing music is like for him. Stick around if you also want to hear some of his own original music. Hello, Justin, again. Welcome to Classical Chats.
Thank you. Hello, Tiffany. So happy to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you again after how many months has it been? Five,
Hmm.
six,
Yeah,
6 months?
been about 5 or 6
6 months.
months. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, so I was just excited to invite you onto Classical Chats because I know that you're a composer. Also, I read something about Beethoven on your website having an influence in your journey. And yeah, so let's just get started with Classical Chats, which means first question is always, how did your interest in classical music begin and your journey from that into
sure.
composing?
So, I was about 15 and I was just, I was going to high school, having fun with friends. And I walked into the choir room one day and a good friend of mine was like, check this out. I just learned this. And he had played Moonlight Sonata, which, so beautiful. I was like, wow, what is that? I hadn't, consciously heard of Beethoven before then, at least not that piece. And he told me about it, told me about the story of the music, and then he played something that he had written, something really simple like, but super pretty. And I was just so impressed. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. And, from there, it was just a slow process of, getting as much music as I could and listening to it and trying to learn it and learning it always a little bit not perfect, um, but Beethoven super inspired me, just with how beautiful the music was and how expressive it was and how he told such an amazing story, with music. So that's where it began.
That's really cool that it began with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, and a lot of people, of course, know this piece and probably has a similar experience. Was it the whole sonata that you heard your friend play?
It wasn't. It was just the first movement of it.
That's unique.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm impressed because not to be mean or anything, but a lot of people like to use the third movement as like a show off, like, look what I can do. And it
Hmm.
wasn't. It was the first movement. Oh,
Yeah.
that's very nice.
Yeah. I've heard lots of people over the years play the third movement, and it is very show offy, and I think it's cool. But yeah, it was the first that got me.
That's cool. I mean, yeah, it's a very unique piece of Beethoven to start your entrance into his music because it's not usually like that.
Right.
It's not usually so calming and it's usually a bit more wild, I would say, but I guess that comes after in the other movements. But were you part of a musical family or was really that piece and that moment with your friend your first entry into music and classical music?
Yeah, that was kind of it. I heard my grandmother played. I didn't actually hear her play, but I heard that she played. And nobody else in my family, was musical. So that's kind of where it all started.
So what was that like for you to learn at 15? You know, a lot of people say that maybe they feel like it's not young enough to start,
Mhm.
even if it's just that they're in the middle of their teenage years.
Sure.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, you have to start maybe when you're 5 or 4,
Hmm.
or maybe for older learners, they kind of struggle with how to begin. So what was that like for you? I think you mentioned that it wasn't perfect. Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing how that was like for you?
Well, I mean, it was great for me. Of course, I wanted to learn things that were harder than I was able to play in the beginning. Fortunately, at the time, I had some good friends who were, actually really kind of skilled at piano, and I would, go up to them and say, "Check this out! I'm just learning this," and they would give me really good advice. Like, let's say I wanted to learn the third movement, which I definitely wasn't able to do at the time. I would learn it to the speed that I hear it in my head, but it would be bad. And that's when I learned that you really have to practice something slow if you want to learn to play something fast, properly. And I just, had little nuggets along the way, but it was cool. I mean, it wasn't just classical music. There was, during those years, there were a lot of popular music songs that were coming out, and they had really cool piano intros. And I gravitated towards, learning those by ear. And just the more of those I kind of picked up on, and the more time I spent playing music and like listening to other classical music, things just sort of grew from there.
What made you decide that you want to be a composer, pianist and a composer?
You know, I don't think I chose to be a composer. I think I was chosen to compose. You know, doesn't mean like I'm anything great. I'm just saying, you know, like it just sort of happened, and the music just came out of me.
Did you take formal lessons or?
I didn't take any formal lessons. After I'd been playing for 4 years or so, I took some theory classes because I wanted to understand what I was actually doing and learn more about how I could, play more music and understand more music, but never had any formal lessons.
So how did you find your way through? I think this is really interesting because, yeah, a lot of people are trying to ask me, but I don't know because I really took more of the formal route. So maybe you have some tips on how it was like for you.
Sure. I mean, I was fortunate in that I was surrounded by people who were good musicians, and not that I would see them always, but I would check in with them. I would play them the new music because that was always so exciting, and get feedback, like on the way I held my hands, or little things along the way that really, I think, saved me. I think at some point you need a little bit of guidance just to make sure you're sitting right and your hands are right, even though everybody has their own style. And I think for people who are going at it on their own, just as long as they are, super passionate about it, love it, are spending time doing it, and making an effort, you know, every day if possible, that they will increase their skill and they will get better and they will play more music. And it's kind of hard to look back because it's all I wanted to do back then. I'd still hang out with friends, I would still do school, but I just fell hard into playing piano. And yeah.
So hard to talk about the past. So is it easier to talk about present and your current projects? I think are you now going to be a movie star?
Definitely not. No.
You
um,
made a pretty interesting project, and I think I saw on your Instagram that you had a premiere recently, right?
yeah, it was, I mean, to my friend and I, we're so excited about it because our whole friendship is based off of these times we would get together and just hang out, and then we would play piano. And do you ever improvise when you're playing around?
I was going to ask you about it because I know that your project revolves around improv, and I suck at improv. I
Yeah.
think it has to do with me not being able to be spontaneous. And
Hmm.
so my left hand never goes anywhere aside from like
Hmm.
two chords. And I don't
Hmm.
even really think about chords either, so that it just ends up
Yeah.
being some it always is the same style. It's always
Yeah.
like a 5-year-old skipping down the street kind of. There's
Yeah.
no contrast. It's I mean, yeah, it's always just not interesting.
That sounds very interesting to me.
The fact that I'm constantly just a 5-year-old skipping down, it's always like I don't even want to play, but it's like nothing. And I think I'm also spoiled that the piano has so much repertoire to learn that I will
For
never be
sure.
bored, be like, oh, I gotta come up with something new for myself because I don't have something that I want to learn. So there's that
For sure.
excuse. But how did you get into improv?
Just trying by and learning by ear. Just for the record, the improvising is something like I really rarely do. And
Hmm.
the type of music I played with my buddy in this movie. I mean, some of the stuff that's kind of funky or bluesy, like sure, there's a time and a place. Um, but I think how I got into improv was just trying to learn new music and sort of figuring out the key that it was in, some of the changes and just kind of playing around. I don't have perfect pitch. I've got really good relative pitch, but I would constantly be trying to learn music and go for a chord that I thought would sound like it was supposed to, and it wouldn't. It'd be something new, and I'd be, oh, cool. What's that? And just kind of cataloging that somehow um, through the years. When I used to play professionally, where you start at 6, you play an hour, you take a break, you play. I do a lot more improvising then. It'd be more fun and interesting if you're going to be playing all the time to kind of go a little bit outside of what I was used to doing.
Wait,
But
tell me about this improv
playing, like,
professionally.
for example, I used to play at a children's hospital in Oakland,
Oh,
and it was a really, I mean, it's a hard place to be, but a really special place to be musically, because this hospital was 5 stories tall and like the length of a football field. And what was really cool is that it had no kind of windows going back into the further rooms. It just had sort of almost like grates across so the sound could go everywhere. And in a setting like that, I would want to play pieces that I've written that are sweet and tender and like heartfelt, but also sort of just play around in those, more positive, more major, more uplifting keys, you know? And I never stick to a pattern, like you were saying. I don't go like pop music where it goes C down to A, down to F, up to G, back to C to A, the heart and soul like loop. I just kind of go where the music takes me. Um, and yeah, improvising, right, it's this whole like salad of things, right? It's where you are, the piano you're playing on, who's listening, if someone's there, how you're feeling, like all mixed into just the moment. And then sometimes when you're in, playing, you go where you know that you can go when you're playing your classical music. You just let go. And, the music sort of takes over and you're almost just hanging, you know, as a part of this really special
yeah.
moment.
That's why I stick with. I have that kind of moment with written repertoire, and you have that with your own composition and your improv. So that's why I stay in my lane, and you're good at what you're doing because you can have that moment. You're not really thinking about individual notes anymore, right? You're
Right.
kind of in the music.
Yeah.
I don't want to say transcending because that sounds really lofty, but something that's not so materialistic. Um,
hmm
how did you come up with this project?
So we came up with it during the COVID lockdown because we weren't really, everybody wasn't really doing anything, right? We were all stuck. And we, over the last 10 years, had gotten together, whether it was a concert in the store or if it was a random piano outside or we were performing at some venue. We'd gotten together over the last 10 years and like just played piano together. And the reason why I brought up if you'd improvised is because it still like really kind of baffles me that we're able to do this together. I normally will be on the bottom of the piano because I feel more comfortable doing like the harmonies and setting the mood and just kind of. And my friend is classically trained, amazing technique. Can just do the things that I see you doing on the videos, where it's just like nailed it. Yeah, he's very impressive like that. So what we did is we got together and we decided we wanted to see if we had any like cool videos we'd made over the years, and we just started going through all this material. And what was interesting is that pretty much 90% of everything we found was just shot on a cell phone. So the quality wasn't the best, the sound wasn't the greatest, and most of the videos that we received were from our friends who were just, sitting, checking it out, holding up their phone. And so we decided we would call this first just going to be an album. We were going to call it Bootleg because back in the day, all these recordings were captured without the artist really knowing about it, and that was called, a bootleg recording. And then after enough time passed, we realized that we had an order that we liked, enough music that we liked, and that most of it were was in video format, and so we're like, well, let's just make a movie, and it turned out to be it's really fun and it's really unique, and it's 22 forehand improvs that we did over like the last 10 years, and yeah, it was cool. I'll send you the link. It's definitely unique, um, but I'm proud of it, and it's totally kind of outside of the normal stuff that I do, but it's still within my world, so it was cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this. And can we put a little clip in the episode for people to see?
Yeah, totally.
Yay! This is outside of your normal things. So what are the normal
Yes.
things?
Okay. So, for example, when I'm at home, I'm not like improvising or playing like funky bluesy stuff. Maybe sometimes, rarely, but I'm more working on, I'm more playing the music that is the new music. On top of like working for Steinway, which I love, and having my family, which I love, I've got this musical side of me. And the musical side gets time, but it's always towards like the end of my day, right? So what I find is sometimes at night when like things start to calm down, then I'll go to my Steinway and I'll play through these new compositions I'm working on. Now I'm working on two new solo piano books of just my new pieces. Some of them are what I just call pretty. A couple of them are more sad and somber. Because a lot of them are written during the last 2 years. But it's a whole array of like different kind of styles of moods, and that's what I call my normal thing. Here's something that I find very weird. Let's say I'm at home and I'm doing some hand exercises because I want to, do that. Somewhere in the middle, I'll just get bored and check out, and then I'll play something, and it'll be pretty, and I'm like, wow, like cool. And it doesn't always happen like that, but sometimes just the music comes at the most unknown times. And since I've been composing for a long time now, I can tell when something I think is special or unique, or that I want to work on it more. But yeah, that's kind of the norm. And I admire you so much,
Eh?
because I've done well in like getting my music into print form so I could share it and teachers can teach it, and but I'm so behind the curve in any sort of like videos of myself playing it. So you've definitely inspired me to get a move on with that, because that's a
Oh,
huge part of, yeah, that you do amazing. That's a huge part of what I want to do, is just get more of it out there in that format.
you should. And if you have any clips, we can start sharing and practicing your videoing. But yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
remember you did this spontaneously in San Francisco in the gallery because I think I said, no, you play something.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
then it was really pretty what you played. It's funny that
Thank
you say you do hand exercises and then you have compositions coming out of it. First question that came to mind was what
you.
hand exercises, and if you have any favorites, can you let us know because I don't know how to answer this
Mhm.
question when people ask me
Oh,
about exercises because I don't do them. Um,
yeah.
Although my
Wow.
parents did find Charlie and Hannon from way back when in the early
Yeah,
days, when you're just
yeah.
supposed to look at everything that's out there, and I do have those books, but I never committed to them.
Yeah.
So
So me too. I did get a Hannah book way back when. The cover's all super worn and like I used to do it all the time. I probably got through the first, I don't know, 10 back in the day. These days, just to like make sure it's like stretching. These days just to take care of myself and make sure I'm can improve, um, or keep my technique. I just run the scales from like I'll do all the keys. So I'll do 2 octaves first, going in the same direction. Then I'll do 3 octaves. And then when I get to 4 octaves, I'll start to do contrary motion.
contrary motion like this.
Yeah, like that. And I'll do that with I'll go through all the keys. And then sometimes I'll do, I'm not at a piano, but I'll do third hand exercises where I'll do 1 and 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 5, just so I can do that back and forth
Ooh,
to try to get my.
I can't do that on my left hand really. So you must be technically better than I am with us. It's funny.
That's so funny. Definitely not.
I encountered this in a Sherpa etude, so I did my fair share of exercising there. Because there is an etude that's just the entire.
Yeah.
But anyway,
No, yeah,
exercises.
I can I can formally affirm that you have amazing technique and that your thirds would be much better than mine.
I don't know
But
about my left hand. That's the thing. You train both of your hands. Like I don't think my left hand can do anyway. Is that your usual routine? If I may use that term that I secretly despise because I feel like
mhm,
nothing should be so rigid.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
do you have any, I don't know, habits or routines when it comes to composing aside from randomly discovering new music from scales?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't only happen at scales. That just always surprises me the most. Um, there's a big difference between sitting at the piano, playing music, something inspiring me, and the music coming out, versus somebody saying, "I've heard something you've written. I would love to work with you. This is the project we're doing. I want you to write something like this." Like I've composed a few pieces for the Diablo Ballet before, and it's a much different experience, composition wise, because you're now thinking emotionally and expressively, but also with your head you're trying to get something to work within what you do as an artist for whoever you're working with. So those are my two like normal things, right? Pieces that come out of me that I want to work on and get to their full potential, then share. And then projects every now and then where I'm actually asked to write something specific for dance, which I like to do a lot.
Which is harder?
Writing for a commission piece is harder, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I would guess so.
yeah, yeah. Also, a lot of the reason why it's harder is because most of the time they want something more than just solo piano. The last two I did for them, they wanted full orchestration, which is a whole like it's so much more, you
Yeah,
know.
how do you get to that from piano, especially since you're basically self-taught?
I studied with actually I studied with Beethoven again. I went to San Francisco Symphony recording of or performance of Beethoven's Fifth, which was amazing. But I was sitting in my seat going, "How is this even possible? Who can write music like this? Like it didn't make sense to me," and I was kind of angry that I didn't have any idea,
Yeah,
how.
angry at yourself, not Beethoven.
Yeah, no, I love. Yeah, no, yeah, right. Oh, it was just a frustrating moment because I knew there was so much to learn and it was so intimidating. So that was where I was lucky and I had met an orchestration student. He'd come into Steinway one day and we just became buddies. And I told him about the concert I went to and how I really wish I could learn, and we studied for like a year. you learn all the different colors and you learn all of some instruments, you write a C, but it plays a B flat or an F,
Ugh,
and
that
just
confuses
some
me.
go down, some go up,
Yeah.
some want their own clef.
How do you learn orchestration? Like, how would you describe it to someone who has no idea?
Probably like learning a second language, or two languages, at once. If you, for example, if you own a keyboard with samples of like strings and brass, that's what I had, when I first started. Then your brain says, well, the violins or the strings are the whole keyboard, you know? Like I could hit the lowest A and that's a string note. And then you learn, right, as you study, well, okay, actually the cello starts on, this C down here and it can only go up to here, and the viola's lowest note is, one octave above, and you just start to put, I don't know. Anyway, it's a lot to learn and it's cool. And orchestration, at least for me, wasn't something I could just casually learn. Like I really had to study it hard and work on, just writing whatever.
Yeah, because you don't only need to know all the different limitations of the instruments, but also how they combine. I'm guessing that's what you also learn in
Hmm.
orchestration. I mean, I took a semester of orchestration and I don't remember half the things, but I think all I really was taught in that curriculum was just, I think, reading the scores of all the different instruments, how some are transposed to a different note, even though it's
Yeah,
written in another note, and then memorizing the ranges, which I have totally forgotten since, and
sure.
I don't remember anything else actually. I don't think that was a class meant for composers. It was just an intro to orchestration. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's why I was curious what how you learned and what it was like to learn. Aside from, I'm sure it's a lot of effort to take in all the different details of the instruments.
yeah, yes. It was very challenging, but and it's I don't even feel like I'm super accomplished at it. I have my feet on the ground. I know, sometimes what I can and can't do, and then I'm still lucky to have these very skilled friends who I can send something to or send a score to. They'll get back to me and go, actually, the trumpet would never be able to hit that note if it didn't warm up first. I'm like, oh, like, okay, I didn't realize that, so
Yeah. A lot
it's
of
cool.
times it's these practicalities that we don't really know from just listening to an orchestra piece how much thought goes into
Yeah.
thinking about individual players. What else is in your life with music?
I guess the only other thing that I would want to talk about, because it's so exciting, is that two of the pieces that I wrote for ballet, I recently had the super cool experience to record them with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra.
Amazing.
Um, so this is like I've worked with our local orchestras that are amazing, great players, but I always wanted to have that like super Hollywood professional sound. And you can hire uh, a professional orchestra in Los Angeles, but if if you drop your pencil during the recording session, you don't dare pick it up because it's like $200 of time, right? Because everyone is so pro, they get paid what they deserve. The studio space, so the Budapest Scoring Orchestra was referred by a friend who had used them before, and they're amazing. It's much more realistic for uh, finances, for to hire them, and they're the type of studio musicians that just show up, sit down, look at the score, and then do it. Um, and it was a really, really, really challenging but good experience because you have to send everybody their parts, and then I had to send a click track. So because I wasn't actually in Budapest, I was kind of like doing this,
Hmm.
where it was kind of like Zoom, and so that the conductor can have the tempo in his ear and he can conduct the orchestra. And what I thought was the coolest is that I'd arranged for enough time to play these two pieces, which gave me like basically three takes of everything. And so there was the conductor, and then there were the people in the booth that I was talking to. And whatever I'd say to the people in the booth, they would say to the conductor, because the conductor was Hungarian. And what I thought was so cool is that after a take, which would be so beautiful, they would ask me for my feedback, and I'd be like, "Oh, it was amazing, but you know, violin, you did great. In bar 30, if you can just make this one like a little bit louder, maybe we'll try that one more time." And then he would turn to the orchestra and tell them in Hungarian, which I just thought was so neat. So that was just a really cool, special, exciting, rewarding, um, like a very big treat to myself to have the experience to record with them, have them play so beautifully. And I'm right at the very end of like kind of doing the editing and the mastering of it, which again was like it's a whole nother universe, to do
Yeah,
that.
that's exciting to hear your music come to life through the recording.
Yeah, yeah,
How you
because
imagine it, the playing and the interpretation. Because I'm always curious about that. How much it's always, I think, a question of how much freedom, right, the composer gives to the musician. Also, as classical musicians, we're always, how much can you go off the score or interpret something? How do you interpret
sure.
something? So, how did you convey
Well,
your I don't know, your dream, I guess, of interpretation to the musicians, or if you just let them play?
well, I mean, I shared with them the story about each piece, and kind of opened up what the music meant to me and what it was about to try to get them into like that world. It was a little bit different than them being able to fully interpret because they did, express themselves, but as studio musicians with like a click track, they were pretty focused on, to the best of their ability, doing what was written in front of them. And then the conductor, he wouldn't necessarily take liberties, but he would, know when to take the volume down a little bit, like they do, or, kind of bring them up. Or so it was more little touches here and there. Once it's like finished and I can share it, and if another orchestra wants to perform it, then they won't have a click track, right? They'll have the tempo indicator and they can go about it and interpret it however they would like, and that would be cool with me. But I think in a studio recording session like this, it has to be that close. Like you have to have the click track. Otherwise, it's impossible to edit 100 people performing, this one bar with take one and take two. Um, and it's amazing. Like you would be amazed if you saw all three takes. You could just grab one bar, like pop it in, take two, and it would be
When's it coming out?
yeah.
Recording.
Well, I can share the first one with you in like a week. Yeah, and you can see like how much it makes me so happy, and it's exciting because it's so much bigger. Of course, I love my piano music, and it's such a part of who I am. But it's really cool to share this really big other amazing group of musicians performing something. So yeah,
That's amazing. Yay, congrats.
thanks.
Can I know the story of the recording or that piece?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the first piece I wrote is called Balestra, and I chose that because the Diablo Ballet had and the Diablo Symphony, like the local um, arts organizations in Walnut Creek, had asked me to write something significant of the times, like during lockdown.
Hmm.
That one's at least for like the first few minutes. It's slow, moving strings. It's heavy, and that's what they wanted. And then they wanted something that would be more lively and I wanted to make sure that we ended this thing on a positive note. at some point, right? Because I'm like, we can't be like this forever. Um, so it was kind of like what we all sort of went through in our own unique stories, like super hard, difficult, challenging, emotional. Is there hope? And then somehow writing the hope into the music. And yeah, I mean, it's more of like what we all went through, but that's the overlaying sort of story.
Hmm.
The other one is, as crazy as this sounds, I don't have a story for it. I mean, I know that I wrote it specifically for ballet and dance, and I worked really hard on it to start it off as piano and had all these different parts that I thought were cool, and I would try putting them in certain orders until I finally figured out how it was right. Then I orchestrated it. But one of the weirdest things, at least I think, about my music is that a lot of the times I don't have the story. As much as you think I would know it better than anybody, I know I feel it and it feels right, but it also feels weird saying this is about this, 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 and this. If it's not really like, I don't know, it's really hard to explain.
I get it though. I get you because I think sometimes we try to find and match certain biographical note of a composer that we're looking for, especially with older classical composers, um, and try to match it with the music. And I find that problematic sometimes because it might be one of those cases where they actually didn't have a specific story in the music.
Right.
It might just be
Yeah,
the music is about the music and it's the music. So it's not supposed
exactly,
to send
Tiffany.
something else. Yeah, thank you for saying that because I don't know how I mean, I don't have the experience of a composer and I don't have, melodies coming out of me when I'm just walking down the street. So,
Yeah.
I don't know how it's like to have music come up just for its own sake, but I do believe that there are instances when you just want to express music in music without necessarily talking about something specific outside of
Yeah,
it.
totally. You nailed it. And I feel like the music I write is for like, as much as it is for me and helped get my like life and self right, and as much as it is for me, it's for everybody else, and um, if and when it gets to that level where I can be sharing it on like, I just hope it helps or does that thing for people that music does, you know. um yeah.
That's
Yeah, but
great.
it's very nice to hear you getting the fact that sometimes there isn't necessarily have to be a story, it's just the music. That was cool. Well done.
Well done to you. No, this is great. And I think that's a great note to end on. That it sometimes it's just music is music, and then there's a human who happens to think about it. But it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be so literal. I think sometimes it's a little bit too literal, the search for what is the meaning of this music, what is it talking about. Maybe it doesn't
Yeah,
have to talk about something specific.
maybe it's what it means to you, more so
Yeah.
than what it meant to the composer.
And I think it's more freeing, and maybe it's something just that we connect as people, not so much that it has to be a situation to
Yeah.
kind of get yourself into to understand that particular music. Cool. Anything else you want to add?
Cool. No, I mean, just thank you for asking me to be a part of this. This was really fun.
Yeah. No, I
It
think
was
it's
good.
great to have you talk and come on to classical chats because you're not traditionally like classical music, but you did have a start from classical music into something current and the new music and your own compositions. So I think that was a cool journey for you to share. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yay! That's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to Classical Chats. Be sure to check out our other episodes on this channel and subscribe if you haven't. For now, be kind, keep striving.